right?
That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Right. Keep on looking good as an old man.
Well, I'm working hard at it. It ain't natural. Pastor Walker, what's up?
I'm doing well. I pray you and your family are doing well in the midst of this.
It's challenging, but we're doing well.
Yep. The congregation is doing okay.
Yeah, we hanging in there.
Okay, good.
Pastor Harrison. Good to see y'all on there. We're starting a little bit. You know, I get on early so I can see y'all lovely faces.
Hello, everyone.
Hey. What's up? How you doing, sir?
All right.
Good. That church background.
Good evening.
Good.
Well, nice green screen.
It's nice.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
How y'all doing? Jolene.
Happy New Year.
Same to you. Same to you. Carla, what you done to your hair? It's looking all kind of good.
It's amazing what some plastic rollers and a Conair dryer will do.
Mr. Burnett, what's going on?
Same stuff, different day, Bishop. How are you?
Okay, that sounds like some of my lines.
You know what, Bishop? When you can't travel, you have to change up something sometimes.
I'm leaving shortly after this thing. I got to go to Florida for a little while. Mr. Mayor, good to see you.
Good evening, everybody. Good to see everybody. Hi,
Good to see you too.
hi Carlos.
Good evening.
We'll start in about 2 minutes and give folks a chance to get on here. Brother Leon, what's up?
Bishop, I'm doing wonderful, sir. How are you doing?
Good. Did you work out today?
You know what? I was bad today because I was watching Ohio State play last night. And me being an old man as I am, I can't burn it at both ends of the candle like you there, Bishop.
Okay. I usually see Leon when I go play racquetball.
Well, we won't tell the story when I tried to play with you one time.
It's okay. It's okay.
You just scared me off a court, so that's pretty good. I like that.
Don't even get on the court with that man, sir.
I believe it.
Lori, how's your recovery coming?
Thanks for asking, Bishop. I'm feeling much better, but sometimes I pretend that I am back to normal and then discover that I'm not.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll keep praying for you.
Much appreciated.
Yes, Bishop. Keep praying for me as well. I'm still having side effects from dealing with COVID-19. And I don't know which is the worst, the COVID or the side effects. It feel about the same.
I didn't know that, but we certainly will pray for you.
Sorry.
Matter of fact, I think I'm going to start tonight with prayer. Anybody that's not religious or who don't believe in God, it's okay. I'm going to pray for you anyway.
Good evening, everyone.
To put your name on
What's
that.
up?
All right, how you doing?
I know, man, I ain't bad. That's fine.
Not an old man, just getting better, getting better.
Hi, Bruce.
Hey, how you doing?
All right, well, I'm going to pray. By the time I pray and give a couple introductory words, probably maybe we'll have most people on here. If you don't mind, I just pray tonight, Father, for everybody that's on the line, particularly for Nanette and anybody who might be going through, who have been infected or facing those kinds of challenges. Would you bring healing into their lives and encouragement also? We ask you to to strengthen us during this time as our task has become even more important and even more challenging in these days. So take complete control of everything that goes on tonight. And we pray it in your name. Amen. Welcome to the meeting of the City of Akron Racial Equity and Social Justice Task Force and subcommittees. In the light of recent events, our task has taken on even more importance and even more urgency. And I'll give some brief words to that later on. But we'd like to begin this evening's session with a presentation by our mayor. Some have been concerned that this effort is being controlled by the mayor. Others have been concerned whether the effort is supported by the mayor. So perhaps we better hear from the mayor. I've learned that when you are a bridge, you get walked on by both sides. And that's usually a signal that you are probably properly positioned between competing forces. So I'm sure he has much more experience than I in getting walked on by both sides. Mr. Mayor, would you greet us and talk to us tonight?
Well, first of all, good evening. Thank you, Bishop, for having me on. And I certainly can understand the consternation of maybe some feeling like that we wanted to control all of this. And quite frankly, I kind of liken it to, I kind of leased a car. And it's up to all of you to drive it. And I think we'll get to the destination together. And where it takes us, I think, is in a better place. And I certainly can understand people that said, well, he's not involved in whether he's supportive. I can certainly say that this is a weekly thing for Tamika and I to update about where the task force is going. And quite frankly, I think with any decision I made, it might have said, hey, what's he doing? I think that this needed to be controlled. I didn't need to drive it. I mean, I'm certainly supportive of it, and I want to make sure that we get the results that we're all looking for, but I didn't want to pre-prescribe those either. So if there's a criticism from both sides that says, well, he wants to control it or he doesn't want to be involved, I want you to drive the car. I think in that respect, Margot and I both felt like with as many community members that are on there and with the subcommittees, there's plenty of smart people in town. I think we probably could have had 1,000 people do this, but I think we whittled it down to a great group. And I'm looking forward to our further discussions, albeit sometimes maybe uncomfortable for some, but I think those are the discussions that we should have, because that's the only way we're going to grow. And I'll transition from that. And I think one of the questions was from, how is the city of Akron organized, power sharing, so to speak? And we are organized a lot like a lot of other cities in Ohio. We have what they call a strong mayor form of government. And it's no indication of me, it's what the office and how it is organized. And obviously, I know all of you are paying attention to events from January 6th onward. And I think some of the consternation from that, our charter just prescribes how we operate. And that city charter is as old as we are. Or a lot older, and to go to the voters is how we have to change it. But if you're looking at the slide presentation, obviously all of our governing consent is from the voters. And there is a legislative body, and that there is an executive authority, which is vested in the mayor's office, and a judicial authority, which is in the courts. And it's a lot like, if you remember 8th grade civics, which I know was just around the corner for many of us, but that's kind of how we're organized. Some cities have what they call city managers, which are hired by council. And I think Dayton and Cincinnati are the best examples of that. Even Hudson has a city manager. And the city of Akron, a lot like Cleveland and Columbus and Toledo and Youngstown have what they call strong mayor forms of government. And if you look at the slide, we are supposed to, and I won't go through every one of the bullet points, but we're supposed to see that the laws and ordinances are enforced. We prepare and submit a council budget of which they pass. That has to be by majority, 7-6. We are supposed to, and I think we do a pretty diligent job of keeping council fully advised as to the financial condition, and we issue quarterly reports to let them know what we're doing. And this is probably one of the more, I think, powerful executive parts of it, is that we establish the policies and procedures and the programs to further the health, safety, and prosperity of the city of Akron and its residents. And those are done by various means through our different departments, whether it's public service, public safety. We don't have a public health department anymore that the city of Akron owns. We merged with the Summit County Health Department some years ago. in a cost saving measure. And obviously we fund part of their efforts, especially around vaccine and child health, infant mortality, and a lot of those different programs that we help with the Summit County Health Department. That's just one example of how we've kind of merged and tried to become a little bit more efficient. But the mayor is in charge of, and like I said, this is not necessarily reflective of me, but the position. They appoint and remove all employees through civil service and through a formalized HR department. And if you look at our charter, that's our city's constitution. And to go to change it, we have to go to the voters and we have to give them an idea that says, hey, listen, we'd like to do this. And that's whether to raise an income tax, whether that's to organize HR better, or to change that charter. That is all by the voters. And I've done that, I think 6 times in the last 5 years. Some of them were perfunctory, just on some council rules like now, so they can meet virtually as opposed to being in person. So we had to make some of those perfunctory changes with that part of it too. So there are a lot of contracts that the city signs, and whether they call agreements, whether it's to lease land, sell a building, give part of a street away, whatever it may be, whether it's to name a part of a street after a famous person in the great city of Akron, like Bishop Johnson. Those are all things that we do. And those, like I said, sometimes those are perfunctory. We also have the right to introduce all ordinances and take part in all discussions in front of city council. Next slide. And if you look at the legislative powers, there a lot of it's organized a lot like Congress. No money shall be drawn from the treasury unless council approves it. One of their most powerful things is residential zoning and zoning period of how the city. So if you look at whether an apartment building can go here or somebody can add a garage to this, all of those zoning things have to go through council, but they've got to go to the planning commission first. They pass all resolutions and ordinances. I just can't start doing something without council's authority to do some of those things. And the council may investigate all financial transactions of any office or any department of the city. I know that's a scaled down version. It's kind of a reflection of probably a really short civics class, but a lot of our powers derive from, or all of our powers derive from that charter, of which can only be changed by the voters. And the legislative authority has a different part. Obviously, they're all elected by wards or at large, and that's a prescribed boundary by this street or by that street. Every 10 years, when the census gets announced, hopefully we have grown in city population, but each council district represents about 20,000 people, and the at-large obviously has the city as a district that represents all of them. We will probably go through, we have to go through probably in the next 6 months to a year, once we get our census results, is redrawing those census lines. So each council ward is as equal as possible. Now, within those 10 years, obviously people move back and forth, but we can't make those changes until we get, a delineated census count of where people are living. And all of it is derived to keep as many members as possible as equal amount. So if it's 21,001 and 19,005 in another, obviously we can't change that except for every 10 years. So like I said, that's a short version of what our authority is. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions if you have it, or I can let you move on with the agenda.
So if there are any questions, I would be happy for you to take them.
Sure. I taught high school for 10 years and I always had questions. So I'm a little bit surprised that there are no questions.
Mayor, I have a question.
Sure. Hi, Tracy.
Has there been any feedback from council on this process thus far? I know it's all brand new.
About your, yeah, especially with staff. I mean, obviously we're involving administrative staff in some of the support networks, whether it comes to HR or public safety, to allow that part. But yeah, obviously Margot and I talked quite a bit about this and the direction of it. I think when we first had the idea, when we were going to do this, I think there were some other efforts around maybe the same thing, even with the county or maybe with some foundation efforts. And what I didn't really want to do was water down our efforts to be able to do that. So I tried to, put as much force and concentration on this. And so council started something a little bit early with some of their committee meetings through September and August and looking at some recommendations to give to me. And we plan on, I think, turning over some of those relevant ones over to the task force for a little bit of a deeper dive. Not that their questions or recommendations won't be adopted. It just all depends. And this was all, if we weren't dealing with a global pandemic, they probably would be easier to institute on some level. Obviously, we're still concerned a lot about budget and where those are going. There's not a lot. I mean, unemployment rates are still high. Not enough people are working. So to be able to institute some of those, obviously, we have to be able to move some resources around and just do that. That keeps us solvent in the same way, too. One of our primary authorities, those of you that have been elected office or in there, is that financial condition, as I know Mr. Alexander is aware of quite well. I mean, they've got to look at that condition every year to be able to operate. And we don't have the luxury of going to the markets and borrowing to balance a budget. So every year, every dollar's got to match to that end too. So that puts other financial pressures to be able to get to the end of the year at some particular point.
Mr. Mayor, Reverend Walker.
Yes, sir. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Good to see you. What is your thoughts about equity as it relates to what we've done in the past and what you see the direction in the future?
Well, I think as we've talked about it, I don't know. I certainly can ascertain that I don't think we've done enough to it. I guess I would look at it broader and say, if all the things that we've been doing before has led us to here, then maybe some of the things that we've done in and around equity haven't worked. Now, that doesn't mean the effort wasn't there. That doesn't mean the commitment wasn't there. But was it really in a cohesive way where the entire community was worried about the same thing? So if we're really worried about equity, then that has to do with how we hire, how we spend our money, into neighborhoods or parks or anything else. And I've said that we are doing things differently. Is it as fast as some people like? I'm not so sure, because this is probably the first or maybe second year where we really looked at that and how we spend. Not that we didn't do it the first couple, but I think if we've gotten to this particular point and we still have that issue of equity, then I'm not so sure we've been, and it's not a blame to anybody or say we've been doing it the wrong way, but I think all of us as institutions have to look at how we spend our money, because that's the most impactful way that we can do that. And so it's on an internal level, whether it's my staff or city staff, all of that, are charged with, how are we promoting equity with every dollar we spend? And that has to do with, with minority contractors, that has to do with investments into neighborhoods, that has to do with new housing, whatever it may be. What's the best way to do that? I think there are different definitions out there when it comes to equity and that spend. But I think we're in a pretty good spot. Even on the finance side, my entire finance team is going through and participating with GARE. I think it's GARE. It's kind of a financial toolkit on equity spending and how municipal governments can promote that as much as possible. And Shelley Goodrich and Tamika are leading those efforts.
If I could.
Sure.
Dr. Walker, thank you for bringing up the issue of equity. And I just want to, while we have so many people on the line, speak to what has come up, what you have brought up. If what we have done up to this point has not been enough, then maybe we ought to be doing something different. And I think that is the case, that we should do things different. And I think diversity of voice, diversity of thought, diversity of people. So I'm a little concerned when we gather together in a task force, but like the article that came out yesterday and said, well, what has been done before has been good enough. And that's not to throw shade or place blame. I just think we should understand that we need to all be willing to do something different and accept people if they are doing something different, because we need a different result.
I don't know if that was a question, but I don't disagree on the diversity of thought and doing things. Like I said before, I don't think it's not to say that this person wasn't correct. I think critical mass helps when it comes to that. I think an elephant can move things a lot quicker than a mouse, and that's why you see a lot of, I think, diversity of thought and institutional involvement around the city around this that I think can make a significant effort. And if I go back to earlier, and not driving the car, but maybe leasing it or leasing a very large bus and having it drive to away. But this is also, and I think we explained this in the very beginning, is that I think this is a way that the city is leading and showing other institutions about how we can be better equitable. And that comes from our own internal practices. Now, I can't dictate to University of Akron, a large employer, or X, but I think all of them are involved in this effort to be able to achieve those goals too. So I certainly welcome that diversity of thought and those to be able to do something different. Now, that doesn't mean you and I or Tracy and I or Dr. Walker and I are going to agree about where that goes at some particular point, but I don't think it'll be in these two divergent paths where I'm so far this way and you're so far that way. I think there is a middle. We have to get past that middle ground part. You know what I mean? It has to be that foot has to be to the other side on the equity side, as opposed to just being, we're going to put our foot in the water or our toe in the water. I think we have to jump in. And that's been the focus and efforts of us, I would say, at the city. Like I said, I don't think everybody's going to agree with the entire path that we've taken. But it's the efforts to move an institution that I think, has been operating a certain way for a long time. Is that the right way? I'm not going to criticize one way or another, but if we want to give a different result, then I think we have to do things differently. And that's not just change for change's sake either. You know what I mean? Because I think that could be, and not that change isn't good, but we have to kind of embrace it too as a community, as opposed to just the city, if that makes all sense.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry, I'm trying to raise my hand, but for some reason,
me too,
not letting me raise my hand, so I'm just speaking up. Mayor, I know that there are task forces or committees, I guess would be a better description, from City Council that are looking at specific areas of issues that we are also contemplating in our breakout sessions. Could you address any of that? Is there going to be an opportunity for us to hear from them?
Yes, I think. I don't mean to cut you off. I apologize. I think that they are wrapping those up as we speak. I think as they got through the holiday season and now that they were putting the final touches on some of their recommendations, and we're actually going, Margot and I are actually going to be meeting fairly quickly in the next few days about those. And then we plan to forward those to the task force and the relevant subcommittees, I think, to take a deeper dive on some things on what those recommendations may be. But I wanted to empower this task force as much as possible. If you're going to spend all of your time and treasure to be able to do this, then I wanted those recommendations, if the ones that, needed a deeper dive or needed a little bit more, I think a broader look at to come from you guys.
Mayor Teresa LaGreer with the Akron Urban League.
Hi, Teresa.
Hi. I have a question about the recent activities that have happened in the country with the storming of the Capitol building and that sort of thing, and the additional information that's been put out that there's a plan to go after, every Capitol building across all 50 states, and then hit other government agencies. I just got off the phone a little bit earlier today with Mark Morial, the president and CEO of the National Urban League, and all of the CEOs of the urban leagues across the country. And the Columbus Urban League in particular, there's a business they had locally that as soon as this thing happened with the Capitol, they were targeted so heavily with racial attacks and some pretty pointed threats about what was going to happen, when it was going to happen, that it was a bakery. They quickly closed their business and, are trying to keep safe and alive. With that sort of activity and having so many minority leaders on this call, is there any concerns or anything that you guys are hearing from a government standpoint that we should be aware of, or we should be a little bit more proactive about? I'm just curious if you guys are getting anything in this area.
We have had bi-weekly calls with the governor's office for about 10 months. And quite frankly, we started our intelligence gathering, so to speak, around October through inauguration. In our briefing from today, and I talked to Bishop just a little bit on Friday, our threat level is up. There's no direct intelligence that says we are going to do this or that. In Akron, Columbus seems to be the center of where things go. But there's also, he's promised additional resources if that be the case. Obviously, we've taken efforts, I think, in and around institutions that may be targets to help. And I quite frankly, Charles and I our public safety are meeting tomorrow to put together, we have a list of sites where we think things may happen. That may be City Hall, that may be the judicial complex, that may be businesses, that may be the Urban League, that obviously our diligence is up in checking patrols and to look at those things too. So yeah, our threat level is up. We're watching, but we haven't had anything direct to say, we're definitely going to target this, because quite frankly, many of these groups have now been, they've gone offline. They're not on the normal social media. So we've had to go to, dark webs and other sites to do that. It's not, and it's just harder to do when someone goes offline and does a different communication. Before they were posting things on Facebook, which everybody can see. Now they're using alternate sites where it's just harder to get to. But like I said, we don't have any direct in the city of Akron, but we're definitely aware of, and we'll take all due measures to do that when it comes to public safety. But I'll talk to Charles tomorrow and have him reach out on anything specific. And if we hear anything specific, believe me, we'll get it to the institution as quick as possible.
Mr. Mayor, Robert DeJarnett. Question on our charge as a committee to make recommendations. And I'm sure that as we make the recommendations, some may not take 18 months to make.
No.
What's the process for those recommendations? Because I know it has to be something within the city's control to do, but what is the process of how you will take those recommendations and implement them?
Part of it has to do with, I'll say first, I don't think anything that you're going to recommend is going to be against the charter or against the law. But there's also, I think we'd have to work through any sort of policy or program to make sure that it gets implemented. And I don't know if, I'm not saying that I will or that I won't, but I would rather see the recommendation than say, hey, listen, we're going to be able to do this right away. It may be something that may have to be instituted over a certain amount of time. It just depends on how that fits with our process. Like if you were to say, listen, we think your goal within the next X number of years is to make sure that the city's workforce is mandated to look like the city. And that would, of whatever percentage, and then obviously we would have to assess ourselves and then kind of go to, okay, what are the programs that we're doing to make sure that we do that? Not only in public safety, but public service, my staff everywhere. And it's just an example. And I don't anticipate many of them taking long. It just depends on what the recommendation is. And then we as a policy group go through and figure out, how we do those things. I can tell you that, if we wanted to change the charter before, we've had months to do this. Like say I wanted to raise income tax, which we did back in 2017. Obviously we studied it for 5 or 6 months of what the impact would be, looking at businesses. And then as that went to the voters, was able to implement that within about 3 months. So it took about a year of planning. I'm not saying some of those recommendations won't be shorter or longer, but it just takes a while to kind of figure out where they fit in and what we have to do differently. I don't know what they're going to be. And plus we've never done this process before. So they could be sweeping. They could be just minor tweaks in how we do things to achieve a better result.
Mr. Mayor,
we're gonna take 1 or 2 more, and then we're gonna let the mayor go. Okay.
Okay, I got one. I got a 3-pronged question actually. One is, Mr. Mayor, what did you see when it came to public safety while you initiated a task force internally to look at how we can recruit minorities where it reflects the city of Akron? That's the one thing. And do you want to
as I go?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yes. Please.
I felt we were underrepresented in public safety. In fact, I feel we're underrepresented in some departments across the board. I think public service is probably not, because it's been a good entryway into a city job to be able to do that. But I thought we were underrepresented. And this goes back to 2015 we, as you know, we didn't have an HR department. We had personnel, we had benefits, and we had labor relations. And quite frankly, that was a mishmash. And it's not a criticism, it's just how it was organized. But I had to go to the charter to say, listen, we need an HR department that does professional recruiting, that does those things. Is it still perfect? I don't think it is. But I think our goal on public safety, just because it's probably out there out front more than anything else, is that it needed to be representative of what it looks like in the city. So that's why we did that. But as you know, that's a continuous cycle, not only on recruitment too, because we lose X number of fire and police a year because all of us are right around that same age where we're getting to that retirement age. So we have to kind of redouble our efforts each time we have a class to make sure that I think is representative of the city.
Okay, and for the group, you started this task force 2 years ago. So it's before the protest, before the George Floyd. So I want to commend you on that. So that's why I took my uniform off. So I wouldn't be talking to you as fire.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah,
But the other part of the question is this: when you want to talk about all the things that HR initiated to try to get minorities and try to get the bonus points in alignment where minorities would have a fair shot at having a job in the city when it comes to civil service.
Well, in doing that too, I think there were a lot of things in police and fire that went through the courts, for a long time that, they would sue each other and you remember all those things. And it wasn't, I don't think it's a pleasant way to do business between our bargaining units is that we end up suing each other. I think there's a fair way to say, listen, if you're going to get bonus points, it shouldn't be reflective maybe on the score on the test. It should be just an automatic thing that you get, whether it's residency or veteran or if we're trying to do that, I think we need to put our thumb on the scale for Akron residents first, if we can. But we also have to be able to attract talent. And to do that, it can't be an outsized way. So if we're going to do that and have those bonus points, when it comes to public safety, I think they're critical in recruiting minorities to be part of public safety. And I'll ask, if you ask we've talked to plenty of high school students and college students and said, hey, listen, would you rather be a policeman or a fireman? Obviously, fire has been winning hands down. We need to do a better job to recruit into the police department too.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for taking the time this evening to share with us. And you'll probably be on again.
Oh, absolutely.
So that we can ask more questions, and as we need to interface with you, it'll be important. So thank you for taking the time. We appreciate it. I'm just going to do a couple of housekeeping items, and then you'll be gone. My task is to serve you and try to lead the effort. And so I'm going to make some recontextualization statements, and you don't have to agree with these, but somebody has to touch on them. And as we move forward, I was a part of the criminal justice meeting, and almost all the subcommittee have met now. And a very important discussion was beginning to take place. And around that discussion, you got a paper from me on African Americans and their feelings. This effort includes many ethnicities, and we are concerned about equity and justice for all. But the major problems revolve and have always revolved around slavery, Jim Crow, hyperghettoization, unjust imprisoning of African Americans. Therefore, it is important that African Americans are substantially engaged in the effort. So we cannot achieve equity and justice for a group of people without engaging them. And so that's why we're here. That's what we're trying to do. African Americans are not monolithic. I don't speak for all African Americans, but as a leader of a church, a leader in the community, a leader of the task force, just let me briefly address the events of the Capitol on January the 6th. It should be evident that there is a substantial group of racists in this country, and that has been the case from the inception of this country. This, along with the pandemic and many other issues, leaves some of us feeling tired and discouraged. I got a number of calls from friends who are white saying, "Are you all right?" And I said, "No, I'm not all right. I'm very saddened by what I see, but I'm not surprised by what I see. What was underground seems now to be coming up on the surface." And so perhaps there is a silver lining in a sense. Perhaps we can stop the debate about whether this country is racist and spend our time and energy working on more urgently on solutions rather than having that other debate. There is a line in Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech that I want to put forth this evening. I have not, his speech has been so publicized and snippets of it have been taken, but this part, for some reason, I've never really seen. But this kind of came to me in a book I was reading, and it says, "With this faith, we shall hew from the mountain of despair a stone of hope." This task force is going to move forward, and I think that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be hewing stones of hope from the mountain of despair. When you look at certain things that happen, they can bring a certain amount of despair, but we're not going to give in to that. We're going to move forward, doing the job that we need to do in order to put forth some substantial recommendations that we hope will structurally change the city of Akron for the better for all of its residents and all of its ethnicities. So I just wanted to touch on that before we left tonight, just so that we're not just passing over events as if nothing's happening. Very serious things are happening in our nation, but it is an opportunity for us to move forward and to do some great work. Is there a burning question or statement you got to make? Let us have it now, and then we will move forward. I didn't scare you, did I? Okay, y'all know I don't hold you on here. The work has to be done. There's a lot of it that you are involved in your subcommittees. I really want to thank you. I'm getting some of those reports. I'm seeing that you're having meetings. You're moving forward. We are glad to have you on. And I think that this is a well worthwhile effort. We're going to put our best effort into it in order to be able to benefit the city of Akron. We'll be having some more meetings. You'll be having your subcommittee meetings. We're moving forward. If you need me for anything, let me know. I'm going to Florida tonight sometime. I'm going to drive. I don't feel comfortable about flying yet, but I will be available. I'm taking all my stuff with me, all my implements and all my iPads and so I will be available to try to do what we need to do to continue our efforts. Now, I'm not just saying this to just be filling up time. I thank you for your effort and for what you're doing. I think it's going to be substantial. You all have a great evening, and I will see you somewhere in cyberspace. Good evening.
Everybody have a good evening.
Stay safe.
Good evening.